What happens when one man dares to challenge a system built on fear and corruption? When he refuses to bow to the same power that has silenced so many before him? This is the story of Mike Anderson, a man who did not just wear a badge but carried the weight of justice on his shoulders. When he stepped into his new role as police chief, he was met with more than just resistance. He was walking straight into a battlefield where the enemy was not criminals on the streets, but the very people meant to protect and serve. Would he be able to cleanse the precinct of its deep-rooted corruption, or would the system break him before he could make a difference? Stay until the end of this gripping story and decide for yourself. Was his fight worth it? And if you were in his place, what would you have done? Mike Anderson's footsteps echoed through the dimly lit hallway as he entered his new precinct. The air was thick with tension. Officers cast wary glances in his direction, some whispering amongst themselves, others watching in silence. He had read the reports before taking this post. This station was infamous, not for solving crimes, but for enabling them. The officers here were feared, not respected. Instead of upholding the law, they bent to serve their own interests. Mike knew what he was stepping into. The previous chiefs had either turned a blind eye or mysteriously resigned when they tried to fix things. But Mike was different. He was not here to make peace with corruption. He was here to dismantle it. The first few days were enough to confirm his suspicions. Reports were being falsified, money exchanged hands in the shadows, and certain officers were untouchable, protected by higher-ups who benefited from their crimes. Mike's first move was to observe, to understand who he could trust and who was part of the problem. He noticed two distinct groups within his department. There were the corrupt officers, like David and Steve, who held power through intimidation and shady dealings. They acted like they owned the station, confident that no one would dare to challenge them. Then there were the few honest officers, like Thomas and Robert, who had been trying to do their jobs, but were either forced into silence or outnumbered by those willing to abuse their power. Mike's first test of authority came sooner than expected. One afternoon, a distraught woman walked into the precinct. Her teenage son had been arrested the night before, and she had been trying to find out why. "They will not even let me see him," she said, her voice trembling. "They are asking for money to clear things up. Please, sir, help me." Mike's jaw clenched. Extortion? Inside his own station? Asterisk, asterisk, he immediately walked to the holding cells. There, he found the boy, scared, bruised, and locked up without any formal charges. Who arrested him? Mike asked the officer on duty. "Steve and David." The officer hesitated before continuing. "They said he was causing trouble, but I do not think he did anything wrong." Mike ordered the boys' immediate release and went straight to David and Steve. He found them laughing in the break room, drinking coffee as if nothing had happened. "I need to speak with both of you." "Now." Steve smirked. "What is the issue, Chief?" Mike tossed the case file on the table. "You tell me." David chuckled. "Just another troublemaker. We were handling it the way things are done around here." Mike's voice was firm. "That is not how things will be done anymore. You will return every penny you took from that mother. And if I ever find you running your own version of justice again, you will be out of here so fast you will not even see it coming." The room went silent. The other officers watched, waiting to see how this confrontation would play out. Steve leaned back. "You are new here, Chief. Maybe you do not understand how things work." Mike did not blink. "No, I do understand. And I will make sure everyone in this station understands that corruption dies today." David and Steve exchanged glances. For the first time, they looked uncertain. Mike knew they would not change overnight. But this was his first stand, the first line drawn in the sand. That night, as he sat in his office, he realized just how deep the rot went. This was not just about two officers. This was about an entire system that had protected them for years. But Mike was ready for the fight. In the days that followed, Mike doubled down on his mission. He started joint patrols, pairing corrupt officers with those he could trust, forcing them to interact with the community in a way they never had before. Slowly, he saw a shift. Officers who had once been detached started to listen to the concerns of residents. The fear in the community began to lessen as they realized they finally had a police chief who cared. By his side were Thomas and Robert, two officers who had long wanted change but never had the leadership to make it happen. One evening, after a long patrol, Thomas sat down with Mike. "I have seen leaders come and go," he said. "None have done what you are doing. You have given us a reason to believe that justice is still alive in this system. Mike nodded. I cannot do this alone. We will face resistance, but if we stay strong, we can make a real difference. Thomas and Robert stood by him. Together, they started organizing workshops on ethics, transparency, and accountability, inviting experts to educate officers on handling difficult situations without abusing authority. These sessions did more than just improve training. They rekindled a sense of pride in those who had once felt trapped in a broken system. A young officer spoke up during one of the meetings. Since you arrived, Chief, I have realized we can work with integrity and pride. No one forces us to turn a blind eye to wrongdoing anymore. And that means a lot. Mike felt a surge of determination. He was not just fixing the department. He was restoring faith in the badge itself. But just as things started improving, Mike realized that change came at a price. One evening, he returned home to find an unmarked brown envelope at his doorstep. His name was scrawled across it in hasty handwriting. Inside was a note, a threat, _do not think you have one. This is not over. You might have thrown us out of the station, but you cannot keep us away forever. Watch your back, Anderson. We will find a way to reclaim what is ours. Mike read the words carefully. He knew exactly who had sent it. David and Steve were not done with him, but neither was he. As he sat in his dimly lit office that night, staring at the note, one thing became clear. This fight was far from over. And Mike? He was just getting started. Mike leaned back in his chair, turning the threatening note over in his hands. The words were meant to instill fear, but they only fueled his resolve. If David and Steve thought intimidation would make him back down, they were mistaken. The next morning, Mike arrived at the station early. As he stepped inside, he noticed something unusual. The atmosphere felt different. Conversations were hushed, officers exchanged glances, and some quickly looked away when he passed. Something was off. Mike walked to his office, but before he could sit down, Robert and Thomas entered, shutting the door behind them. You need to see this, Robert said, placing a folder on the desk. Mike opened it, scanning the documents. His stomach tightened. It was a formal complaint against him. The accusation? Abuse of power. His actions, removing corrupt officers, enforcing strict ethical conduct, were being twisted. The report claimed he was creating hostility in the department, targeting senior officers unfairly, and disrupting long-standing practices. It was a calculated attack. This was filed last night, Thomas said. Guess who signed it? Steve, David, and 6 other officers who were benefiting from their system. Mike let out a slow breath. He had expected resistance, but this was a deliberate attempt to remove him from his position. He looked up at his officers. Are they getting support? Robert nodded grimly. Some officers are staying neutral, but others are siding with them, either out of fear or loyalty to the old ways. Mike knew how this worked. If the complaint gained traction, it could lead to an investigation. And if those in power decided to protect their own, he could be forced out before he had a chance to finish what he started. But he was not going to sit back and let that happen. Instead of reacting with anger, Mike played his next move carefully. He knew that fighting this battle publicly would only fuel their accusations. Instead, he gathered evidence. With the help of Thomas and Robert, he went through case files, financial records, and body cam footage that had been conveniently ignored before. What he found was damning. Bribes disguised as community donations, false arrests used to extort money, fabricated police reports covering up officer misconduct. The deeper he dug, the worse it got. He compiled everything into a report, not just against Steve and David, but against everyone involved. But before he could take the next step, something happened that changed everything. One evening, Mike received an urgent call. A shooting. A young black man, unarmed, had been shot during a routine stop. The officers involved? 2 of the men who had signed the complaint against Mike. Mike rushed to the scene. The crowd was already gathering, angry, demanding answers. The victim, Jamal Carter, was a college student on his way home from work. Witnesses said he had complied, raised his hands, yet he was still shot. The officers claimed he had made a sudden movement, but body cam footage told a different story. Mike watched in silent fury as the video showed Jamal standing still, hands in the air, when one officer opened fire without cause. This was the moment. This was proof. Mike immediately ordered the arrest of the two officers involved, despite the backlash from within his department. The precinct exploded with outrage. Some officers openly defied his authority, refusing to carry out orders. Others whispered that he was destroying the department by going against his own men. But outside the station, the community rallied behind him. News spread fast. Protesters gathered outside the precinct, demanding justice, accountability, and real change. The mayor's office called. The city officials were now forced to take action. Mike was called in for a meeting with the police commissioner. "You are making powerful enemies," the commissioner warned. Mike met his gaze, unwavering. "Then I am doing something right." The pressure mounted. The officers who opposed Mike became desperate. Then, one night, Robert called him. His voice was tense. "Chief, you need to get down here. Now." Mike arrived at the precinct to find internal affairs officers waiting for him. "Chief Anderson, you are under investigation," one of them announced. "There are allegations of misconduct against you." Mike's blood ran cold. This was it. The final play, ***. "What are the charges?" he asked, keeping his voice steady. "We received reports that you have been interfering with ongoing investigations, falsifying evidence, and abusing your authority." It was a complete lie, but it did not matter. They had set him up. David and Steve had been removed from their positions, but their influence still remained. And now, they had convinced the higher-ups to turn the system against Mike. Mike looked around. Some officers avoided his gaze. Others watched with satisfaction. But in the crowd, he saw Thomas and Robert standing tall. They still believed in him. That was enough. Mike took a slow breath. He would not go down without a fight. As he walked out of the precinct, flanked by internal affairs officers, cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions. "Chief Anderson, are you guilty of the charges? Is this retaliation for the officers you had removed?" Mike stopped and turned to the cameras. "I have only done one thing since I arrived: stand for justice. If that makes me a threat, then so be it. But know this: corruption cannot hide forever. The truth always comes out." His voice was steady, but inside, he knew the real battle was just beginning. Would justice prevail? Or would the system crush him before he could finish what he started? ***. Mike sat in the interrogation room, his hands clasped together on the table. Across from him, two internal affairs officers flipped through a thick file. "Chief Anderson," one of them began, "these are serious allegations." Mike leaned forward slightly. "Allegations based on what evidence?" The officer smirked, sliding a few documents toward him. "Fabricated reports, false statements from officers, and manipulated case files. All designed to paint Mike as the corrupt one." "This is ridiculous," Mike said, his voice calm but firm. "Who exactly made these claims?" The officer remained silent for a moment before answering. "Multiple officers, some of whom you've had removed from duty." Mike exhaled slowly. Of course. The very people he had exposed had turned the tables. They knew they could not win in a fair fight, so they used the system itself to silence him. "You went after senior officers, shook up decades-old practices, and made a lot of enemies," the other officer added. "Did you really think they would let that slide?" Mike remained silent. They wanted him to break. They wanted him to panic, to admit something, anything, that could be used against him. But he would not give them that satisfaction. After hours of questioning, they finally let him go. For now, But the damage had been done. By the time he stepped out of the interrogation room, the story had already hit the news. The media had a field day. Some networks called him a hero, a police chief standing against corruption. Others labeled him as a disruptive force, causing chaos within law enforcement. And inside the department, the divide grew wider. Some officers stood by him, but others openly turned against him. Some refused to take his orders, while others spread rumors that he was just as corrupt as the people he removed. The mayor's office was under pressure. Protests had erupted in support of Mike, demanding the truth to come out. But the city officials were looking for a way out. They wanted the controversy to disappear. Even if that meant sacrificing Mike. And that moment came sooner than expected. Mike was called into a high-level meeting with the police commissioner, the mayor, and legal representatives. He already knew what this was about. The commissioner wasted no time. We need to restore stability in the department. Mike met his gaze. By removing corruption? The mayor sighed. By removing the controversy. Mike clenched his jaw. And by controversy, you mean me? Silence. The commissioner finally spoke. We are offering you a way out. Resign, step down quietly, and this will all go away. Mike almost laughed. They framed me, he said. You all know that. And instead of fixing the problem, you are asking me to walk away. We are asking you to be realistic, the mayor said. This is bigger than you. Mike sat back. This was exactly how corruption survived, asterisk asterisk, not just through criminals, but through those who chose to look the other way, asterisk asterisk. He had two options. 1. Resign quietly, protect his reputation, and let the corrupt officers stay in power. 2. Refuse, fight the system, and risk losing everything. For a moment, he considered it. Walking away would be easy. But then he thought of Jamal Carter, the young man shot without reason. He thought of the victims whose voices had been silenced for years. And he knew he could not back down. I will not resign, Mike said firmly. The mayor sighed, rubbing his temples. The commissioner shook his head. Then you leave us no choice. A press conference was scheduled immediately. Within hours, the department issued an official statement. Chief Michael Anderson has been placed on indefinite administrative leave, pending investigation into allegations of misconduct. The media ran with it. Suspended. Disgraced. Under investigation, asterisk asterisk. They were doing everything to destroy his credibility. But what they did not expect was what happened next. Because Mike was not going down alone. With the help of Robert and Thomas, Mike leaked the evidence he had gathered. Corruption reports, bribery records, body cam footage. All of it was sent to investigative journalists, civil rights groups, and federal authorities. The public erupted in outrage. News outlets covered the scandal. Activists demanded a federal investigation. The mayor's office was flooded with calls, demanding justice. The people who thought they had silenced Mike now found themselves under fire. And then came the final blow. A whistleblower, one of the officers inside the department, asterisk asterisk, came forward, asterisk asterisk. Live on national television, he confirmed everything Mike had said. Corruption, cover-ups, illegal arrests. All of it was real. The mayor and commissioner had no choice but to act. Internal Affairs shifted their investigation. Instead of focusing on Mike, they turned to the officers who had framed him. And one by one, asterisk asterisk, Steve, David, and their allies fell, asterisk asterisk. They were charged, arrested, and exposed for what they truly were. Weeks later, Mike was cleared of all charges. He walked back into the department, but things had changed. Some officers still resented him. Others had left, asterisk asterisk. But what mattered was that the system was being rebuilt. With corrupt officers removed and real reform underway, the department had a chance to change, for the first time in decades. But Mike knew this was just the beginning. Change was slow, resistance was strong, and battles like this would never truly end. But as he stood in his office, looking at the city outside, he knew one thing. He had chosen the right fight. Because justice, asterisk asterisk, real justice, asterisk asterisk, was worth it. This story is a powerful reminder of what happens when people stand up against corruption. What do you think of Chief Anderson's fight for justice? Was it worth it? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you believe in powerful, real-life stories that expose the truth, like, share, and subscribe for more. See you in the next video.